Hi, my name is Becky, and I'm a senior systems engineer at AGI.
I'm John, and I'm a systems engineer here at AGI.
I'm Kate, and I'm a senior systems engineer here at AGI.
Today we're going to talk to you about using STK in a disconnected environment. The first thing that we'll start with is the Globe Manager. From your 3D window, you can access the Globe Manager with the icon that looks like a globe and a file folder. Once you open that, it will dock underneath the object browser, and you now have the ability to bring in external terrain or imagery. You can click on the little button that allows you to add the terrain and imagery. The file path that may come up by default is C program files, AGI, STK11, STK data, VO textures. From there, you can select imagery or terrain that might be useful that you'd like to bring in. Here we're going to find the Terrametrics Earth 8 kilometer imagery, and we're going to add that in. Immediately you'll see a change in the globe. If I pan around, you'll be able to see what this looks like. This would be one option for bringing in imagery from a disconnected environment.
So as Becky's talking here, she's showing you a full globe image, but you could do this for any particular small thumbnail terrain or imagery section as well. So it doesn't have to be the entire globe. You can do it for a selected region as well.
If the imagery appears a little bit blurry, one of the things that you can do is make a modification in your scenario properties. Double-click your scenario name, go down to 3D Graphics Global Attributes, and you can modify the image cache and the terrain cache. So I'm going to up mine.
And what this is going to do is add more of your terrain and imagery into your virtual memory so that STK is going to remember all of that nice high fidelity images as you rotate and move around in your globe.
There we go. So visibly, we're now able to see that that looks much better, and we won't have any more blurriness in the 3D window. Another option for getting data, whether that be imagery or terrain, could be an external source that you might have, something that you want to bring in that you may already have. We also have a data disk that has additional information that users can download or have shipped to them. And there's information on our website about this. You can get to it through our resources page or through our support page. And this just gives you an example of the different options for terrain, as well as high resolution maps and imagery resolution options that you can bring in. And I have that installed locally on my machine, so I can quickly show you another example for how to bring that in. If I go to the location of where that data disk is located and I go to the imagery folder, I can simply just drag and drop one of these files into the 3D window, which will also allow me to add that in. So here I have a blue marble bathymetric shaded relief 500 meter imagery sample, and I drag that into my 3D window, and you can see now that I've added in yet another piece of imagery that's global, and I can change the rendering order and toggle them appropriately.
So one of the other things you can do is add just a small thumbprint or small region of terrain and imagery into your scenario folder. So what Becky's doing right now is going to look for our Mount St. Helens image and terrain pieces, and you can add both of those in, and those will ask you if you want to use this terrain for analysis, which we will. And then once it's loaded into your scenario, you can zoom to it and see this nice high-resolution piece of imagery loaded into the scenario. We can see the terrain around it. And as you notice here on the top edges that we won't have the high-resolution image beyond the extents of our terrain. So we have a high-resolution image for one small section and then the lower resolution background globe for the rest of the region.
Then, as you can notice when they added that, one, the image was a JP2, and then second, the terrain was in a PDTT. We can bring them in multiple different formats, but a PDTT is going to allow you to see the visual terrain as well as use it for analysis. And a JP2 is what we prefer to bring in for imagery, but there are a variety of other formats we can bring in as well.
And if your terrain and imagery formats are in a different format, there's a terrain and image converter within STK to convert whatever terrain and imagery format you have directly into something that STK can render a nice high quality in our 3D globes.
Yep. Now let me zoom back out and talk a little bit about bringing objects into STK. So if you're online and you don't have access to the internet, you still have options for getting data into STK, whether that be representative data that you're just bringing in or adding in orbital elements or waypoints for an aircraft or another moving object. But we also have a standard object database, which is installed locally with STK as well. If we open up the Insert New STK Object window, you can see that if I'd like to add a satellite, there is a method from Standard Object Database that still allows us to pull from the install locally for objects. So for instance, if we want to add in the International Space Station, I can just type in ISS, do a search for that, and you'll get a number of different common names and official names and SSC numbers that come up. You can sort these by operational status, add other key things to search by. And if you know the SSC number, then you can find it in the list here, or if the common name, for instance, and then bring that into your STK scenario.
You also have the color selector there, so you can choose the default color when you bring your object into your scenario. You can see the default color here showed up as red. Lots of times we like to use brighter colors, cyan, yellows, pinks, to just help make it a lot more visible in your globe.
And then also, I think Becky was the one who did the video on bringing that database in, so you can have that updated, because obviously a lot of those databases are going to be out of date when you do have this install. So
yeah, check out our FAQs and the YouTube videos for more information for how to bring in that information to sneakernet that and update your databases if you're not connected to the internet. Another thing that is good to know if you're not connected to the internet and you still want access to our help pages. So if you recall, our help is context sensitive. So when you're in one of the properties pages, down at the bottom, if you click on help, it's going to bring up that context sensitive help regarding that page. A good thing to note is when you're installing STK, when the installer page comes up, make sure that you're selecting the install desktop help option. There's a radio button that allows you to do that, and then you have access to this even if you're not connected to the internet.
Help is one of my favorite parts of STK. I like to say that our STK help is actually helpful. It's one of those things that we're a software tool written by engineers for engineers. We know the types of questions that you're going to have as you start using the tool. And so we've spent a lot of time with our development team and our engineers trying to make the help as helpful as possible and answer all of, that 80% of questions that you have as you start to use the tool. What is this panel asking me for? What does this actual value mean? How does STK calculate it? It's all documented there within the help. So if you haven't checked the help out, definitely check it out because it is uber helpful.
Another thing you'll notice in the middle of the page of the help when it comes up is the training section. So once again, you might not be connected to the internet to get out to the tutorials. However, they all are contained here as well. So we can click on the complete list of self-paced tutorials and you can walk through the examples from the beginner level all the way up to advanced or focused topics. So that's another thing that is a good thing to point out and useful for folks who are starting to use STK but may not have the luxury of being connected to the internet.
Yeah, there's a variety of things that we ship with STK to help enable that, such as those training documents, some sample terrain and imagery so that you can go plug it in, our code samples folder that's in the install as well, all to help enable having a similar experience to being online, even if you're not. Right. So there are a variety of models that are also shipped with STK to enable you to visualize these objects and see them. If you do want other ones, you can sneakernet them in, but we ship with quite a few different ones, including the ISS that you see here. That's obviously a pretty high fidelity model.
So since we brought in that International Space Station from the Standard Object Database, it automatically correlated the SSC number with the model that we have, so it knew to add that model directly in. As John said, there's a bunch of models that come installed with STK, and then more available on our website. And of course, you can use your own models within STK. We support the legacy MDL format, the Collada format, and then the new hotness, the GLTF formats. Thanks everybody for watching this video. If you have any other questions about how to use STK in a disconnected environment or just using STK at all, be sure to check out our resources page on the website. And then always, if you are a paid customer of STK, call our customer support line or send us an email at support@agi.com, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.